All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, with Major League Baseball continuing to expand its postseason format in recent years, it has paved the way for some rival teams to face off in the playoffs. We've seen the Boston Red Sox and New York Yankees meet multiple times in October. We also saw the St. Louis Cardinals and Chicago Cubs get it on once. And then, we've seen the San Francisco Giants meet the Los Angeles Dodgers, just to name a few. Okay. So now you can add the Philadelphia Phillies and the New York Mets to that mix as they are set to get it on in the National League Divisional Series, which begins tomorrow. So it's about a 90-minute drive from between Philadelphia and Flushing. And it's very common to see fans of either team make the trip to the opponent's ballpark. You think about some of the history over the years between the Mets and Phillies, and of course, it's going to be highlighted by 2007 and 2008. When the Mets had those, especially in 2007, that historic collapse that paved the way, for the Phillies to win the division. And then, of course, in 2008, we saw the Phillies win their second World Series championship. The back and forth banter, especially with the fan bases. I mean, you think about it, Philadelphia and New York in any sport, okay? Rangers and Flyers in hockey, Giants and Eagles in football, Sixers and Knicks. I guarantee you, if you had a high school that compete from Philadelphia that competed with somebody from New York City consistently, there would be no love lost. Okay, that's how these two cities are. But getting back to it, we saw Philadelphia win 95 games during the regular season en route to winning the National League East. But I'll tell you like this: do not count out these Mets. The Mets finished 6 games behind the Phillies. They were right there as far as competing in those games with Philadelphia all season long. The Phillies did win the season series 7-6, but you saw the Mets in their last series during the regular season with Philadelphia when they really needed it. They took 3 out of 4 at home, and of course, that was a big kick for them to get to the postseason this October. Plenty of familiarity with these clubs, and at the end of the day, when you're facing a division opponent in the playoffs, it's kind of like, in the NFL, when you face a team for the third time during the year. You think about it, it happens sometimes in the NCAA tournament where you have teams from the same conference face 4 times in the year. So when you have something like that, you just simply throw the rule book out because there's nothing that your opponent is going to show you that you're really not familiar with. I've been saying it since the Mets clinched, and clearly I'm going to keep saying this right now after they knocked off the Brewers. This team is hot right now, and more importantly, they're playing with house money. We've also seen the number 6 seed in each of the last 2 years get on that magical run and win the National League pennant. And of course, the Mets are looking to make it 3 in a row, but it ain't going to be easy against a very good and a very balanced Phillies team. One question that always is lingering over with this new playoff format in Major League Baseball, and it comes to the Phillies right now, will the rest hurt or hinder them? We haven't seen Philadelphia play since Sunday, okay? And they've had plenty of time to get rest and get well if they've needed to, but nonetheless, we've seen the Mets. They had a doubleheader on Monday. Then they turned around and they had to immediately fly to Milwaukee for 3 intense games with the Brewers, and now they're getting ready for this contest for Game One, which is tomorrow afternoon. I'll tell you like this. Again, like I said, to me, I think this series is a classic toss-up. It's a classic pick'em because at the end of the day, I said it coming into this October. Any and everything could happen this year in Major League Baseball in the playoffs because I didn't see a dominant team throughout the year that you could really get behind. I see a lot of flawed teams. And when it's all said and done, you're going to see some magical things in this postseason. It's not just the Mets that are showing this, okay? We've seen the Kansas City Royals go on the road and sweep the Baltimore Orioles. We saw the Detroit Tigers, a team that, both the Royals and Tigers are not that far removed from losing 100 games. And then, of course, these New York Mets as well. So I think that what we saw in the wild card round is basically going to be the tip of the iceberg between all of these clubs that are remaining in this postseason for the excitement. I'll tell you like this: Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia and Citi Field in New York are going to be rocking. And if you're a Mets fan, you get your wish because you get to see some postseason baseball at home. So make no mistake about it, especially with the way that the Mets have played coming down the stretch to get into the postseason, and then this wild card series with the Brewers. This Met fan base is ready to explode, and when the series does shift to Queens for game number 3, I guarantee you the folks are going to be out there in full force to show their support for their club. There's going to be some Met fans making the trek down the turnpike to get to Philadelphia for game 1 tomorrow. I guarantee you that. And there's going to be some Philly fans making the trek up the turnpike to get to City Field for games 3 and maybe 4, depending on how this series goes. The Mets really threw everybody for a loop when they announced that Kodai Senga is going to be starting game 1 in this series. Of course, Senga only had one outing this year for the Mets as he has battled through injuries. Of course, for the Phillies, they're going with the former Met in Zach Wheeler. So I think, they're going with their big gun on the mound, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Mets can find a way to get to him early in this series. You got Christopher Sanchez going for the Phillies in game number 2 against Luis Severino, while Aaron Nola gets the ball in game number 3. And I think that's part of the plan for Rob Thompson. He trusts Aaron Nola on the road in this situation more than he does Christopher Sanchez. Totally understandable. You're going up with a veteran in a hostile environment, but nonetheless, I think this series is going to be worth the price of admission and then some. Like I've said before, anytime you have a situation when rivals face off in a postseason affair, at the end of the day, you simply throw the rule book out of the window. I think you got two fan bases that are ready to enjoy this series. I think you have a baseball world that is ready to enjoy this series. And I think if you're Major League Baseball, and I've talked about this before, you got to be extremely happy with the way that this is working out as you get a rivalry series in the divisional round. It's not the only one because we're also getting Guardians and Tigers, two AL Central rivals. And of course, the Padres and Dodgers are meeting once again, two longtime National League West rivals. But nonetheless, the Phillies and the Mets, what can you say? A lot of bad blood between the fan bases. I don't know if it's spilled over to the teams at least, but nonetheless, I think this is going to be an extremely intense battle over the next week. And for all of you baseball fans out there, just simply sit back and enjoy. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. Also, if you are on Facebook, please feel free to follow me at the Sports Depot 365. I always say it's a good sports site for fans that want to talk a little about everything. TFX, what's going on, my man? Long time no hear from you. You're saying you can't wait for this series. Well, I'll tell you like this. There's a lot of people in the Northeast that are really locked in and dialed in for this series. I think it's going to be tremendous. There's really not a lot that you can't say about these two teams. They got star-studded power from both sides. The Phillies have a deep lineup. The Mets have a deep lineup. The Phillies have a solid pitching staff. The Mets have a solid pitching staff. And I'll tell you like this. If you're a Met fan, clearly you're excited that this team got past Milwaukee. But it's going to be interesting to see if last night's game by Pete Alonso can help to propel him to get on track, because that's the thing with power hitters, especially a guy who hits like around 240 or 250. They hit him in bunches. Okay, so Pete Alonso got going last night. He got off the schneid. Can he get on one of those rolls? We got to wait and see. But Carlos Mendoza, the Mets manager, has been pushing all the right buttons. He went to slumping JD Martinez in game number one in a pinch hit situation, came up big. Pete Alonso came up big in this series. Francisco Lindor has been doing it. Moving with Edwin Diaz in certain situations, it's worked out. But getting back to Pete Alonso, maybe he can get on a roll for the Mets, and the Mets would definitely need that if they could ride the Polar Bears back to a series win over the Phillies. It won't be easy because, again, this Phillies team is loaded. We've seen the Phillies in the past as the wild card come out and dust off the Braves in the divisional series, and now they're going to try to prevent the Mets from doing the same thing to them. But nonetheless, I think this is going to be a legit series between two longtime rivals. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.